Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for our New Year's Border Fiesta virtual class with instructor Kate Quinn, brought to you by Mike over at So For Less. And Mike, do you want to tell us a little bit about our virtual events and
Oh,
how
I'd
you
love
get
to.
these?
I'd love to.
Perfect.
It's great to be back with everyone. Thank you, Sarah. And of course, thank you, Kate, for joining us today, being our guest host today. Always excited to see Kate. She's an amazing instructor. And one of the things that I just love about Kate is she's so systematic. She's very deliberate in the way that she teaches. And one of the reasons why she's such an amazing educator. But as I mentioned, welcome back to the So Show, guys. My name is Mike, and we're live today with a New Year's Border Fiesta. So, as I mentioned, very excited to see what Kate has in store for us today. I hope everybody had a wonderful Christmas. I know, again, it's been a weird year. But it's kind of brought everybody together in this weird virtual way, but we kind of like it, and I feel like we've really gotten to know each other, at least in a weird commenting, kind of knowing each other way. But it's been a lot of fun. So thank you guys for at least coming along with us on that ride. Do want to get a couple of things out of the way before we get started today. We've got some giveaways. You've heard us talk about it. If you've seen it in the past, you've seen it in the emails. And the way that you're eligible for the giveaways is by registering in advance. That's why we ask you to do so, and that's how we pull your name. We can't pull your name if we don't have it, so just remember to register in advance for all the shows. The winners will be notified via email in a day or so, maybe a little bit longer just because of the holiday week, but we will be announcing what we're giving away during the live show today, so that's super exciting. Our shows are free on Tuesday shows at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time. They are free. Now, the cool thing about it is that we also created a VIP group. We like to call it a VIP group on Facebook. And it's a great way to join in the conversation after the show. All of our educators are part of the group, and it's kind of a continuation of our virtual education sewing circle. It's a great way to reach out if you need help. Post some pictures of progress. I know we've kind of grown into a bit of a family, so everybody likes to see what you're working on. And it's a fun way to kind of stay caught up with all the projects that are going on. So I'd like to extend an invitation to join if you haven't already. And the easiest way to get there is to just type in thesoshow.com. So just www.thesoshow.com. And that's going to forward you right to that Facebook group. That's free as well, but you do have to request membership. Again, guys, we do this every Tuesday at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time. If for whatever reason this is not enough Sew Steady ruler work education, there's also Sew Steady University, which is a great platform that Sew Steady created for even more ruler work education. Now, the cool thing is there is a ton of free content in Sew Steady University, so there's absolutely no excuse to check it out. But there is content available for purchase. And the really cool thing about that is that, number one, when you purchase the content on there, it's yours forever. You can rewatch it as many times as you want. And two, the lion's share of the revenue that's generated from that site goes to support the educators that you guys see week in and week out on the So Show. So they get the lion's share of the revenue. So it's a great way to support your favorite educators that you guys see all the time on here. We've got some exclusive show discounts for you guys today. Sarah's going to be sharing that for you in the content, or in the comments, excuse me. And those show discounts are going to be good for 2 weeks. So you've got 2 weeks. If you see anything that you see Kate using today that you'd like to get your hands on, you've got 2 weeks to use that exclusive show discount. Now, the show in itself, you'll be able to watch for 4 weeks. So today's show you can rewatch for 4 weeks. So once you get whatever it is that you order, you've got the remainder, the balance from 4 weeks from today to rewatch this show. Now we've got some, and I've been kind of telling you guys about this. We've got some new formats coming out after the first of the year, and it's going to change a little bit depending on the show because we're going to be incorporating some of the content from Sew Steady University, which is really exciting for us. So we're going to be bringing you guys some of this content that you hear me talk about week in and week out, and we're going to be bringing it to you. Now, that's a very limited engagement. I'll have more information for you guys coming up soon, but for the time being, this show you can rewatch for 4 weeks. Guys, don't be shy. This is a live class. We are live with Kate, which means that you've got the unique opportunity to interact directly with your educator. That's via the comments, of course. But don't be shy, guys. That's why we do these live shows. It's why we're here. We want to answer your questions. We want to teach you guys how to use your rulers more effectively, more efficiently, and more creatively. That's why we do this. But if you don't shout out to us in the comments when you've got a question, we can't answer it. So remember, there's no dumb questions. Actually, I could probably come up with a couple of them. But for you guys, fire away. That's why we do this. And I'll just get you started. So if you haven't already, hit us up where you're watching from. The So Show is international, which is, I'm very excited. I love seeing our international customers. So guys, if you stayed up late or got up early, thank you so much. We're proud to have you guys watching with us. So again, you're up close and personal with our educators. It's why we do these. It's why you guys tune in. So don't be shy. Just a quick summary, guys. Every Tuesday, 1 p.m. Central Standard Time, set your reminders, your alarms, or whatever it is that you need to do to remember. 1 p.m. Central Standard Time, we do this. It's called The So Show. We partner with So Steady. You guys know all of this stuff already. So I'm going to quit talking because I want to see what Kate has in store. And I know that's what you guys are here for. So I'm done, Sarah, unless you got something you want to share. But again, guys, Happy New Year. Thanks for an amazing year. And we're looking forward to an even better 2022.
Awesome. Perfect. Thanks so much, Mike. And my name is Sarah with So Steady. I'm on the back end relaying your questions to Kate. So again, don't be shy. We'll be here. And keep your ears tuned for those giveaways. And Kate, let's take it over. What do you got for us today?
All right. Hey, you guys. Happy New Year. I hope you had a great Christmas. We are ready to share something that a lot of people want because they need something for their border. A lot of times we can figure out what to do with our square, but then you have this big long strip of something and we are asking ourselves, what do we do with that? So I'm going to start off with something that is basic, but not necessarily easy. It's something that we all want to do very often, but I hear people say, oh, just stitch in the ditch. How many people out there have heard that? Oh, just stitch that in the ditch. That's the easiest way. Well, I'm here to tell you, I don't think stitching in the ditch is the easiest way. If you could cross over those lines, that is definitely easier because then you don't have to worry about placement. When you stitch in the ditch, if you stitch outside of your ditch, sometimes it's kind of visible. And it depends often on what color thread that you're using. So I'm going to pull this up. This is actually in the ditch. It's not on the brown. But because that color is so starkly different, it is going to show. And you can see in other areas, it doesn't show nearly as much because it's on this color. Right here with the blue, it hides really well. It hides a little better there, but certainly on the brown, that's where you're going to see it. And then this is the green, and it blends really well on that pink. So what do we have to do? We need to be stitching in the ditch. That's why they call it that, right? So there, right there, that is that stitching. Inside this blue, this is the top. That means that the seam is pressed towards the brown, so there's no extra fabric under this layer right there. So this I'm going to call the valley side, and this is the mountain side. And if we look at it, you can see that this brown is up on top. And right here, I'll just try to peel this back just a tiny bit so you can see there's where the extra fabric is. Those two extra seam layers create that mountain. All right, so let me show you. I've got two left here to do on this. I did a little pre-stitching to baste this in, but I'm going to do it on this brown with this blue thread, which we already said does show quite a bit. So the valley here is the brown. The brown is on the low side, and this pink is the high side. So there's two ways. I'm going to do it both sides of this, and I'm not going to flip it. I'm going to show you two different aspects of how you can line it up. The ruler that I'm using is actually the straight ruler. This is the 8x3, and So Steady has a lot of different straight rulers. This one is nice because I can pretty much control it with one hand. If you can see the size, I can control it with just one hand. If it were longer, I wouldn't be able to put my thumb right down here on the end and slightly manipulate that just with my finger if the ditch is moving around. So I really like this style of ruler. The 12-inch arc is also great, but this has more lines to allow you to echo. So let's get started up here. And I'm just going to be outside of the boundary of the quilt and stitch just a little bit to get aligned towards this valley right here. So get this under there with your finger and just start your needle right at the top, right in this valley. Then I'm going to line it up. So the reason I want to show you this side, let me get my spacing gauge out. That spacing gauge, if I line it up on this side, the valley is a natural wall right here against this seam. So if I were to place the ruler on the inside here, I feel like that is easier to literally butt the edge of the spacing gauge right up against this seam. There's a natural boundary that it sits right against. So I prefer, if the valley is in this direction where it's folded over this way, that I want to have the ruler on the valley side, right? So I'll go ahead and do that, and then we'll start going. And I actually won't lie, I lean forward pretty close. And what you can do on this side is this finger might control this mountain. If my thread is getting just a little closer than I want, I can make a slight adjustment just to open up that fold a little bit and make sure that the needle is staying on this side. And you might see right here that this does not stay the same. And that's because I'm a person and not a robot. And I think that what happens is it's really common that our seam might be a little bit wavy because fabric has movement, so do we. And so we'll keep this as adjusted as we can visually and just keep adjusting this just slightly. And then as I get down here, I can put my finger right down at the bottom. And we'll go ahead and we'll sew as far as we can. So I'm not worried about the fact that I'm right on the edge here. I'm going to stop. This is my 2-finger safety rule. You always want to stop before you get to the end. We're not trying to play ruler chicken right down to the very end of the ruler. Just scoot it down and then line it up just like that. I usually check in 2 places to give me the best orientation that I can have. So I want to get close, but I don't want to get so close. As you see that now this is shorter down here. See that? That would cross over. So now I'm going to adjust and just make sure that I have a nice good fit, nice and smooth. Try not to worry when you're stitching in the ditch about trying to make it fast. I don't need it to be fast. I want it to be accurate. I'd like it to be fast, I won't lie, but it's more important to me that I do it well than to be hurrying along. So that'll be something just to, watch out for as far as your own conversation with yourself. As you're moving along, you got to make that decision. Do I want it to be as perfect as it can be? If it gets a little further away, then I could take this thumb and I could just scoot this in just a tiny bit to start pushing the needle closer back to that seam if it starts drifting a little bit. And the key to doing that is do it gently. We don't want any large corrections here. Just a very small and gentle correction is going to be much more satisfying and look much better in the end than if we make a big jog. Okay, so as I said, my seam is definitely wavy, so I'm going to be making some little adjustments as I go. It's okay. Nobody will see it at the end. It'll be fine. And if they do see it, I have a tip for that. We'll talk about that if we see that later. This is like a bonbon accent. So right here, I don't have a ton of pressure downward, like downward. I have that gentle pressure, but if I push so hard, then I can't make any manipulations right there. Okay, so we'll just sew right off the end. Nice and easy. I see there that there's a little bubble, like the fabric kind of comes up, like maybe I didn't press it really well. So I'm going to try to align for that and kind of go around that little hump. There's my finger, kind of get me right close to that and making sure I'm right in my ditch. Okay, let's see how we did. This is when you're like, Mommy, please, let it be good, right? Let it be good. All right. So what do you think? It's blue. Of course it is. You know it is. But I think it's pretty good. And what happens when we actually are in that ditch is that this fabric on this side tends to lap over a little bit and hide it pretty well. So this side is actually easier because this is my ruler controller hand. I am a right-handed user, and it's very much easier for me to hold the ruler with my left hand. Don't ask me why. I don't know the mechanics of that. If you're a lefty and you feel like you need a little bit more control, you may try putting that ruler underneath your right hand and see if that makes a difference for you. I think a lot of people that are left-handed have been forced to work in this world ambidextrously. And what I hear a lot of my students will say is, oh, you know, I can do whichever. So try which one you prefer and see which one works better for you. So again, on this side now, I'm on this dominant hand, and I can lay my fingers right across these guides on here. This is our ruler handle, the add-a handle, and I can manipulate by pushing against that a little bit if I need to change the position ever so slightly. So I can just put a little, it gives a lip right there that you can use to manipulate. So as I get down a little closer, I'll just adjust that finger position right there, and I'll just keep going. What I really don't want is I don't want to sew on the mountain. I'm more willing to be further away from the ditch on that side in the valley than to stitch up on this mountain. If you stitch up on the mountain, what you're going to get is your machine's going to sound really loud and clunky. It's going to say thunk, thunk, thunk. And that's because all of a sudden, instead of going through just this layer, this single layer like we're doing now, you're going to start going through 3 more layers of fabric because you have the 2 seams underneath, the 2 folded under seam allowances. And it just looks much more unsightly. I think it hides much better in that valley. So again, there's your 2 fingers. Just scoot that down and we'll get that right in place. So I can use this to push on the top if I need to push that way, or my thumb is manipulating right down here on the bottom. Sarah, did you have any questions?
Someone asked, the add-a handle that you have attached to the straight ruler that you're using, is it removable, or once it's stuck, it's pretty much stuck?
No, it is not removable. It's not repositionable. You definitely want to put it in its place. I'll pull one of mine out. This is what they look like. It's got a paper backing. So let me just pull this one up. I'll show you the difference. So this one has the paper backing off already. You want to pull that off. Don't leave that on. Pull that off first, right? And then this is the little adhesive down here on the bottom. And there is a sticky grip that is adhering to this right there. If you take this off, it's not going to stick again. Like sometimes you can reposition your stable tape. This is not. So make sure that you know where you want it before you put it on. Because I'll tell you, I put it on one of my other ones recently. I'll show you. It's right here like this. I put it on this direction and this bumps the foot. So I'm actually going to probably try and put the other one on and put it the other way like this. I think this is going to be easier. And then I just kind of lay my fingers and it gives me a little bit of a lip right there so that I can push against to give me a little bit more grip. Somebody that I find this might be very helpful for, I mean, I find it helpful for myself, but if you have neuropathy in your hands, or if you have maybe arthritis and you have trouble getting the amount of hold that you want, then I think these can be a really good addition to your setup to give you that little bit more grip, a little bit more leverage as you're using the tool. And they're really helpful. I mean, I like them a lot. I used to use them for years, and then I don't know why I got out of the habit, but I'm back and I love it. So, all right, let's finish this up. And were there any more questions, Sarah, that you wanted me to address?
Was there any handouts associated with today's virtual event?
There are no handouts for today's virtual event.
Nice. Okay. So watch closely and then, rewatch
Yes.
as many times as you'd like.
So, none of the stuff that we're doing today is super, super complicated. And I will give you the measurements here. But when I give you the measurements, what I hate is somebody will say, well, I can only do this in a 3-inch space. No, it's expandable. Part of what we want to show you is how if my little design doesn't fill up the space, how can I add to that and make it fit the space better? So that's part of it, is the integration of different tools that we can use in order to get a really nice, pretty look, even if, say, our uh, rope is only 1.5, but we have a larger border area. Well, we can still make that fit. Okay, so real quick, I'm just going to pull this out and just show you the ditch on the other side. I will totally admit I'm better on one side than the other. And I think that's true for most of us, right? But this one, I think it looks good. You can barely see it. It's there, it's hidden. But when you look at it straight on, this is covering that up. So you really have to like get in there to open that up and see it. But that's perfect. I'd be really happy with that on my quilt, and I wouldn't care what color it is. It's going to look great. Okay, so let's go ahead and start doing some of the borders. The first one that we're going to do is the middle, and we'll kind of work our way out. And the very first one is not complicated, and it is the 4-inch arc. This is from the sampler set. So we are doing a few items from basic sets. If you don't have this set, you really want it. It's so powerful and does a lot. This is based on a 4-inch circle. So if this was closed all the way around, this would sew a 4-inch circle. It has a center line right in the middle. And I do like to use that when I'm doing this next border. So I would take the border and mark it in half so that I have a nice even line in order to match up the template. So let's mark that really quick. Let's get on that fast. The spacing that we have right here is, let me see, I'm pretty sure I know what it is, but all right, let's just do it this way. This is our Donnell's ruler. It's pretty awesome. Oh, I did good. It's right at 2.5. Look at that. My seams are not always perfectly accurate. So if we split that in half, it's 1.25, right? So we need to mark that at 1.25. Let me grab my ruler over here that has that 1.25, and we'll start marking. All right, that's going to give us that pretty center line. If you don't have a nice even measurement, you can actually put 2 rulers together like that, right? And get it to match on each side. Like if your center is not perfectly 2.25 or something like that, you can actually fudge a little bit with the 2 rulers to make that center line look as even as possible. I like to start this design from the bottom, whatever you want to term the bottom of your quilt, and work upwards. But this template can also work backwards because this arc and this arc are the same. They don't look like it, but this is essentially the inside. It's sewing inside the space, whereas this is sewing outside the space. And that's why they look different, but they actually stitch out the same. So let's just make a little bit longer mark. We may not do all of this one because we just want to show you basically the concept, and we don't need to sew the entire space. Okay, if I do need to sew some more, I'll go ahead and mark it. So right down at the bottom, I can decide whatever I want in terms of what the first space is, but I do want to keep it related to whatever I'm going to do in the rest of the space. So like, I don't want to have a big gap at the bottom and then the rest of them are nice and perfect. If you want to, this is maybe a good place to use your ruler sticker and just put a little mark right on there. Okay. This way I can make sure that I'm using the same line each time. So I think we'll use 1-inch spacing. So I'm going to put the little pink arrow right there. And what that tells me, I have 1, 2, 3 spaces, and then the foot will add the 4th 1/4 inch. Notice how on this, they're getting narrow out here. So this is only going to spread a certain amount of distance, which is why this is selected at this 2.5, because it's going to fit very well in this space. It can go a little bigger, but it can't exceed how big the actual template is for this particular design, or it's just not really going to be useful for you. So we'll kind of work it this way so you can see it a little bit. The ruler is telling me where my foot needs to go. Okay, so I'll go ahead and get my foot. Oh, what did I push? I think I pressed my cut button. Okay, that happens. So I'm going to get my needle right in the ditch, just like we talked about. Pick up that thread. And if I wanted to, I could actually sew up the ditch right here from the edge of the quilt. Like I could sew up a little bit until I was where I wanted. With this, we are sewing across. So I'm going to just tack very little bit right there. Okay. And I'm going to let the needle get right into the valley. This is valley on both sides of the blue, right? So both of these are in the low area as we stitch up. So you can make your seam decisions as you go. If you want to, plan ahead so that you'll know that it can ride right up the seam. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to move up. Now, if I want to be right in the ditch and I want really pretty, accurate seams, I can just stitch up right here. How far up do I need to go? I don't know. I'm going to go ahead and estimate a little bit. So now I've got this lined up. Let's turn it so you can see the alignment right here. I'm going to just shift it because I want to show you how we're looking at it. Let's see if we can get in a little tighter too. All right, so I've got the center line right on the center. And what I want is right where this little pink arrow is, this white line should be aligned right on that existing stitch line. And if it can't be, I'm just going to stitch up a few more stitches. Mostly I want to travel on the ruler because I want a nice clean center line. But if it's only one stitch, it's not worth it to me to put the ruler back on. So I'm touching, okay, over to the ditch. And again, then just keep that straight edge handy and we can just kind of switch them back and forth, right? So I'll just put this on here and stitch up my ditch. I know I want to travel about 1 inch, right? Because we know that's about how much. So right here, we're looking for about 3/4, give or take, because the foot is going to take up that extra quarter. Once I've got that, I can line it up. And actually, this one is aligned pretty much perfect. So we'll just keep going. Okay. Right into our ditch, get our needle right into position. And again, just put this right back here. You want a little bit of a tight fit because we want to be right in that valley. And we're looking for 3/4 of an inch on the foot. So as I'm looking right here, this is that estimate right there that's getting me pretty close so I can align everything right on the line. And that looks pretty good to me. The reason I like that center line is that center line is keeping the curves so that they stack neatly right on top of each other and they don't kind of go like this. Okay, so let's go ahead and we'll just do a couple more. Again, looking for that 3/4 inch right there. This is the end, and I'm looking where the edge of the foot is right there. Then I can just put this back on. And if it's not quite aligned right where I want it, I can take another stitch or not, but I think it looks good. So that visual estimate starts to become something that can really help you be more efficient and lets you make your designs a little bit faster. So keeping these nicely spaced as we go. Okay. And one thing else, if you mess up your space, which I've done many times, I can tell you that, then what you can do is just, if this is a pattern right here and then you have something that's bigger, like this one looks bigger, then make the next one bigger and then make 3 and then make the next one bigger and make 3. And then you could just fill this in as some wacky thing. And then you've just created a pattern. So, anytime that you have something like that, you don't have to rip it out. You can actually fix it just by creating something a little bit different with it. Okay, and this one's on the end. And so what I may do with this one is I can easily come back in and I can use this back side right here like that. And I can correct this because this is on the end. This is really an easy fix on this side. So I always try to evaluate, how important is the fix? How easy is it? Do I really need to do it or not? And that's something that you can do in your own work. So let's scoot up just a little bit more. And I think this will be the last one. We'll kind of move on to that next one. Looking for 3/4 inches right there. And that lets me line this up pretty close. See if I need maybe one more stitch or not. And I don't think I'm quite there. I want to be right there. I went a little too far, I guess. So right here, I'll stitch back till the ruler is touching the foot and sew my line. At this point, I'm going to just tack this thread right in that seam allowance right there, right in the ditch, so I can go ahead and cut it. But I think that is very effective. You know, as a design, this is very simple. It's not complicated math or anything like that, but it does look really good. And it's something that you can do that's not really something that has a lot of involvement in terms of how the design is laid out. So anytime you have a small border, that can be a really, really effective design. I'm going to just make one other comment on that. If you create a pattern, you're going to change the visual interest here a lot. Like if you do 1 inch and then a 1/4 inch and 1 inch and a 1/4 inch, you can really, really change the visual impact and create just a little bit more energy for the design just by making that simple change. So that's something else you can do. But the more lines or the more pattern that you put on, the more you have to pay attention is all. That's the one big thing. Okay. All right, let's cut that and we'll be done with this one and we'll move on. All right, I have quite a few fun circles that are in this next one that we've done. And I think we'll do that one next. So that's in this pink area. And this space is not that big. Let's go ahead and just show you the measurement real quick. We said that this was 2.5, and this one is actually the same. This should be 2.5 also, okay, as far as how wide this is. Now, I can mark the center line, but I don't need to. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use my 2-inch circle from my sampler set, and I'm using this as the boundary line, right? So what I want is my spacing gauge to help me. Now, I don't know if circles will fit evenly into this space. I actually have no idea, but I don't care. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use my spacing gauge on this side, and I'm going to bounce back and forth between this area and the other side. So let's get that spacing gauge out to measure that first one. So when I line this up, I want this to be just inside the valley right there for this particular circle. Sarah, do you have some questions?
Yes, we did have a couple. And that first one. What type of pen were you using to mark that center line on the blue piece?
So I often use air erase markers when I was doing that first one. This is available from Dritz, I think, something like that. And there's many different versions of this air erase, but I like it because it comes off. I don't have to work very hard. Here's another version of it, something like that. Air erase. This one's a little bit of a finer mark. The other one is fat. So if you need precision, then you have some choices. These are ones that I use predominantly on a lighter fabric. And because they go away, then I don't have to really work too hard. So I like that. What was
Nice.
the other one?
Someone did ask, when you tack and stop your stitches, are you sewing in place or do you move back and forth just a little bit?
Yes, I do not sew in the same position. If I sew in the same position, the knots are going to build up one on top of the other. Only by very small amount of travel can you make them stitch in place and make the stitches very, very tiny such that they're tight and they can't come out. So I always recommend absolutely moving. Don't sew in the same place for sure. Okay. So
And do you have any feedback for using monofilament for stitch in the ditch work? Do you ever use that?
I have used monofilament. I don't really prefer it. I'd rather use something really fine, like 100 weight. And they have smoke, and they have gray, and they have black, and they have white, and they have cream in those weights, like 100 or 80 weight. Those threads are so fine that they can hide really well. This is actually 40 weight that I'm using right now, so it doesn't hide as well. But I found that for me, it's not that you can't use monofilament. Use it if you want to. But what happens, especially for kids quilts, is if it comes loose ever, I've had somebody like they pull on it, right? And it's so strong, it doesn't break. And then they end up pulling the whole piece of stitching out for like 10 or 15 inches. So, I think if it's an adult quilt and it's not really something that's going to be messed with, but I wouldn't use it on a kid's quilt. I've learned that, that's not a good idea. So anyway, I think it works fine. It's a little bit more wiry than some of the cotton or the cottonized polys. So that's just something for you to play with. You should definitely try it and see if it works for you. All right, here we go. So I've made this fit. It's just going to kiss right on the seam there. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to sew more than one time. And I'm okay if this goes out of the boundary. It's fine. Because I don't know if the other side's going to fit perfectly or not. Now, within this, I can pick anywhere that I want to. I can stop at any position. If I want to put little circles in this right now, this is where you're going to pull out your little helper right here. And to do this, you can also use the between the line circles. In fact, let me grab those. So you can either switch your templates, like this, and put, bigger or smaller. And that's what the tape is for, right? So these have the different sizes. This is the 1/2 inch. This is the 1/4 inch, which I'm not going to use, 1 inch and 1 1/2. So basically it's these 3 sizes, or you can take your echo rings and you can put those on and you can make another size circle. So with the echo rings, I don't have to take the rulers on and off. Okay, I still have to manipulate. So really it's a decision for you about how much work you want to do. So I'm going to pick up this right there. I don't really want to move the ruler. I kind of want to keep the ruler in place as much as I can. So right now I'll use my knee lift and I'm just going to put this middle size one on. Let's see. I guess we'll have to shift our ruler over because we're using these. Put the thread through, line it up with your fingers, and then lower that. Go ahead and push this right onto the foot, and then just make sure that it's all the way on. We don't want it dragging down on the bottom. And then I'm just going to pull back on the thread a little bit and get my needle right in that same spot so that I don't have any slack in the thread right there. Okay, so now the needle's in position. We'll get these threads out of our way. Now, what I want is I essentially want to align it basically where it's that same distance. I don't want to sew outside of the existing circle, right? So let's test it real quick. We'll just go a little bit slowly. Okay, perfect. And if I want to make another one, I can. And one of the things I found for myself is rather than switch these a billion times is maybe I can just align this over here and I can put my little small one, kitty corner. So I'm just going to scoot a little bit and I'll go ahead and just put the small one in here on this side. That prevents me from having to change so many times. So from this position, I can remove this, just lift this up, pull this out right through that little thread slot. Okay, knee lift is great for that. And then just set your needle right back in place. And now I can do this other side. So I'm going to just kind of keep these under control so they don't run away. And it's the same thing. What you're lining up is you want to make sure you're not going to sew outside the boundary on this opposite side now. So I'm just going to line it up right there with that spacing gauge and make sure that he's going to sew right to the boundary but not over it. So that needle is starting at that same start position there. And then I'll come up over on this side. So now I've got these cute, they almost look like eyeballs, right? And then we don't have to do every single one. You can just put in a few plain circles. And then on the next one, you can put a different spacing. And you're basically just creating a fun little bumper circles, right? So on this side, we'll do it on this side. And we'll use our spacing gauge. Make sure we're not going to cross that boundary, just like we said. We'll get it nicely spaced. And then we'll just do this side. One and a half times around. Now I can start here and I can move up. I can leave this one empty, or I can start flipping templates. So we just mentioned, you have the option of using the echo rings. So if you don't have different size circles, then just go ahead and use those echo rings. That'll give you multiple sizes. But if you have the between the lines or other small circles, you can easily line them up just like that, and then just switch them around. So here, I just want to make sure that it's going to be basically right here, right aligned with where we were, because this was the start position over here. So now we have a nice alignment between there, and we can put a small one in. So here you end up with a lot more switching, right? People always ask me, oh, do you mind switching all those? No, I don't. I don't. What I like is I like my circles to be beautiful and really clean. And I'm not capable always of making them look so perfect and making them fit so perfect. So I want that. I want the ruler to do that work for me. And I like it. I like how it looks, and I appreciate the visual. So I didn't put my tape back on. Do put your tape back on. Make sure that when you hit this with your foot, it's not going to be pushing that around. So again, I'm lined up right on that center position where these two join. And now I can put this one in. This one's quite a bit bigger. It's changing that spacing. And then I can put one on this side if I want to. So remember that the limit for us is that we're kind of trying to go one side to the other side. That's the boundary. So each time it's bumping against the edge of your seam allowance on each side. So that was just the random rule that I made up. If you don't want them to touch, or you want them to be a 1/4 inch away, how would you do that? If you didn't want the circle to touch the edge of your seam allowance, how could you make it fit and be a 1/4 inch apart? This is a quiz for all my smarties out there. What do you think? If you go ahead and you can answer that. Put that in there, and Sarah will tell me who's got it and who might be still thinking about it. All right, let's just do one or two more, and this will kind of give you the idea. So is this border super fast? It's not super fast. Oh, darn it. I need to go back. I didn't put my circle in on this side. Okay. I'm just going to follow it around because it's going to be faster. If you feel like you can't travel like that, it's okay. You can go ahead and put the ruler back on. So you see right here, I'm going to use the same alignment here. And then I'm going to fill this circle. When it comes around on this side, if it's not touching properly where I want it, I'm just going to let it stop at the other circle, because I think I aligned it a little bit oddly. I don't want to have it cross over the other circle. So I'm just going to go ahead and use what's there. Okay, and then we'll align this side, and we'll do this other side. Okay. So again, we'll be filling in this one, or you can leave it open and just keep filling that in. It just creates kind of a fun, whimsical look right there. So, and again, there's no rules. If if this one is underneath, that's okay. It looks fine. It's going to look totally fine. Let me see if there's some questions. If you get to the end of the border and there's not enough space for the last repeat of the template. Judy, that is such a good question, and I'm going to answer your question. First off, I want to evaluate before I start sewing the border. Do I care? Sorry, I'm bumping the camera. Hang on just a second. Do I care? And if I know that the template is so big, I mean, I don't know how many 2-inch circles are going to fit in here because I'm offsetting them. I don't know how much room is taken up. These are not in a line. So the chances are I am going to have one on the end that is not a full circle. I don't care. For this one, I totally don't care. I'm just going to whatever happens, happens. But maybe if you're doing something where you really do care and you really want it to be the same on the bottom and the same on the top, the only way to guarantee that you can have the same is to start in the middle. So for example, if I was doing circles right in a line, I would want to start with a plus in the middle of the border in the very center position. I put a plus, and my first circle would go there, and I'd work out to this side. and then I would come back and tie off my thread here and go that way. The only way that you can do that and get that same very much even look is to plan ahead. And I think that marking doesn't always do it. I'd rather sew it. I'd rather start in the middle and sew out to the one edge and then come back to the center and sew out the other way, because a lot of times the markings may shift around, but once it's quilted in, it's quilted in. So let's see what other questions we had.
We had a couple questions regarding the needle size when you use 100 weight thread and what you recommend.
Yeah, you can go down to an 80. I don't usually use a 75 needle. I usually use still an 80, but I've used 100 too. A lot of it depends on if you're using just that thread in the bobbin or if you're using it in the top. If you're using it for both, I would definitely go to an 80, and that should work really well. It's still a pretty big needle for that size of thread, but because you're going through so many layers, I prefer that. But I think that the 75 gets to be really tricky. Sometimes it doesn't really make a big enough hole with all of those layers for that thread to go through. So I'm going to say 80 for that. Was there anything else?
We did have a question earlier. Just were you going to go over the strip sizes, or is that something you want to like put in the comment section afterwards, or we can
Yeah,
go over
so
it now?
I did already. I'm doing it kind of with each. These are 2.5 inches wide. So your cut is 3 inches. Both of these are the same. Okay. And then as we do each one, when I do that strip, I will give you that detail right at the beginning so you'll know. We are actually measuring it on the screen so that you guys can see that measurement. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and I'll cut this right now because we don't want to spend every minute on just a couple. We want to do a few different ones. Okay. So the comment I think was from Judy about the border just now and how to space it out. And what we'll do is let's go ahead and we will do that. Okay, so let's go ahead and we'll measure this. And this is the one that has the clamshell and they're overlapped. So let's go ahead and we'll mark to the middle. And I'll use my long, super long ruler over here so we can mark that. And we'll use chalk this time. Chalk shows up really well on this brown. It makes it super easy to get a nice, good alignment. All right, so I'm lining it up right on the edge right there. And I'll just mark it at, let's see. I'm going to mark it at 20, and then we'll just measure the remainder right there. Okay, so it's 20 inches to this little tick mark right there, and then we'll measure the rest of it right here. All right, and the rest of it is 13. No, I'm doing it backwards. Can't be 13. I was like, what is that? 11 and a half. So it's 31 and a half. So 15 and a half, 15 and 3/4. So we want to mark the center at 15 and 3/4. So let's go ahead and do that. We'll put a little tick mark. This ruler is so big. It's hard to be on camera with it. I'm just going to pull it off to the side and get the center marked for you real quick. 15 and 3/4. Okay, and then I'll just mark that center with Donnell's ruler because she has that nice centering ruler. And it's just easy. It's a little bit of a nice size to use. I can get it right where I want it pretty easily, and I can line it up to the seam. So we'll square it up on the seam right there on both sides. So it's nice and squared up. And just mark that center line right there. Okay. So this is what I was talking about starting in the middle. We're going to put our clam on and we're going to work that way. And we are doing the clamshell on both sides. Okay. So when we're using that clamshell, you're using this first reference line right here. We could use a different reference line if we wanted to push the design up away from the border. So if I wanted to, I could line it up on this other alignment. But this size right here, this is a 4.5 inch cut and it's 4 inches wide. And we're going to put a little detail right down the center. So we're actually going to use just the first line. Once I get that center mark, I can go ahead and line this up right on the boundary. right there. And we'll put our needle right in that seam allowance right there. Okay, so do I need to tie this off? Yes, I think that's a good idea. I think that I probably want to do a few tacking stitches right here. I can use the ruler to do it. And then I can get these threads a little bit out of my way and now line that up. Let's turn it so you can kind of see also towards you. Okay, so I'm lining this up right on the ruler right there. And I'm just going to sew all the way down. And if I don't want to position my hands too many times, I can just move the ruler right now before I start. Get your fingers up inside the clamshell. When you're coming down on the clamshell, you always want to make sure that you are really keeping it in good contact on the bottom. So my fingers are up in here, no holding back here because that's going to just pop that up. We always need that pressure near where the foot is going to be. Okay. Right into that seam allowance, checking that position as you're looking, and then we'll just keep on going. Okay, and we'll just finish down to the end. So this is not going to guarantee that I have a perfect clamshell at the end. What it's going to guarantee is that I will have the same at the end on this side as I do on the other side. So I think that's something that I just wanted to clarify, because I think the comment was saying that her design doesn't look the same on the end because the borders are different sizes. So typically what I do, if I have that and I have a corner, you can either put a decorative corner in and just end right when you get to your square corner, or you can do some type of crafted corner that kind of connects the two sides. So right here, you can see I don't have a full arc right there. That's okay. It should be exactly the same on the other side. So what I would do at this point is I would actually cut this off, cut these threads. I would go back to my center position and I would pick up these threads right here. If you wanted to hide these, you can use a self-threading needle and you can hide those threads, or you can tie them off. I think I will go ahead and pull mine through later. I'm not going to do it right now, but I'm going to put that needle right in that same spot. So now this clamshell is perfectly centered on this space. So I'm going to be working with my non-dominant hand. This hand is going to be holding the ruler. When I get up into this clamshell, I need to watch out for the needle bar. So I'm going to use some pressure on this side and a little tacking right there. And then gently just move that out of the way. Okay, making sure that I'm keeping this connected all the way and making sure that everybody has good pressure against that foot. Okay, and we'll just keep going. So there I can give more pressure now just by shifting my finger. If you're new, I don't recommend shifting your hand position on the fly. If you are an experienced ruler user, you can go ahead and do that. But if you're new, just go ahead and stop sewing. Try to find a nice, easy place to stop, and then adjust your hand, and then keep sewing. So again, this is right near that needle bar, so I want to watch my finger, keep it out of the way, and just get this last little guy on there. So on the sample, what I did with this particular one is I actually offset the clamshells, and we did it on both sides. So I'm going to show you how to do the offset real quick. And it does create a fun look to it. So this is what we have so far. And that blue is a really nice color on that brown. It's not, it does scream in the sense that it's very bright, but I love it. I think it's a nice accent on there. It's going to show our design off really well. Because we have this beautiful, perfect center line and all of these designs were worked from it, I can take this right now and I can line up this center line right on that. Instead of how we did it before, I'm just going to use that first reference line, and now I'm going to line this up right on it. And what this is giving me is the perfect intersection of the middle of these clamshells. If I started on the end, I might be able to do a lot of work and mark it and everything else, but I'd rather just set this on the center. I can start right here and go that way, and then I'll just come back and go the other way. So I do get questions from people. Sometimes they're like, I just want to do it because I want to not have to tie off anything. Well, okay, then you're going to have to find a path that will work for that. I'm okay with tying off. I do use that micro tacking a lot, and I don't feel any anxiety about having to start again, starting a new row, whatever. But if that is something that bothers you, you can control that. Let's get these threads underneath here so they'll be out of our way, and we'll get aligned right on our reference line. And now as we sew, I want to show you something to look for. This is where smushing is going to be nice and helpful. I can line this up right on the middle there, and then this is going to put that right in the center of the existing clamshell. So there's really a lot of great reference lines right there in order to align this perfectly. Right in the center. And then again, we're on this odd side, so I'm going to use 2 hands. And when I sew down, if I see for some reason that my center line does not line up perfectly, I can just mush a little with my fingers and get these lines aligned so that we'll be right in the middle of that clamshell. Why do I need to mush? If the ruler is so precise, how come I have to fuss with it and make an adjustment? The ruler is very precise and it's not changing sizes. However, the fabric is drawing up, right, with the quilting and the batting underneath, and we're pulling it, we're pushing it, we're moving it, and that's why you see that there is a difference. It's even more apparent when you're working with a circle, like a clamshell or an actual circle, because the fabric is going to draw in all the way towards the circle in every direction. It's drawing in 360, and that's why you're going to get more draw in with a circle than you would if you were working with a design that was straight. So this is what we've gotten right there with this cute little space. So the clamshell itself is only sewing out at 3 inches. And by putting it in this 4-inch space, what we've done is create a little channel and an opening in the center. So if you have a border that is wide, wider than the template, like wider than your rope or wider than your circle, whatever, you can actually create a little decorative element by putting that on each side. So we would put this same design over here, and then there's a gap in the middle. And what I did is I marked the center and I sewed with my little tiny circle, and I just put that in as an embellishment. So let me show you. Again, this is a 4-inch wide channel, and look at how awesome that looks right there. And you can even see mine's off. See, mine's not centered, but I showed you how to center it. You could offset it if you want to and not make it perfect. This one was about 1 inch offset, so it kind of has a little like a scooty look to it. But then this would be just that 1/2-inch circle right down the center. And I'll show you that with between the lines. We'll just do that real quick. Because this space is an even distance, it's again very easy for us to mark it, right? So if it's 4 inches, this is a 2-inch wide right here. And you can literally just set that right on there. And I'll also reiterate what I said before. If you use 2 rulers and you find that this doesn't align, you can do a little bit of evening out in order to get your center mark. So we'll just do a little bit right here, and I'll show you that center alignment. Sarah, did you have some questions I can answer while I'm working on that?
Yeah, well, we perhaps could do our first giveaway, maybe even
Oh yeah, I'm just
2
like,
giveaways.
I love giveaways. Let's do a giveaway.
Here, we'll do 2 to catch us up. So we're going to be doing the atta handles that you saw, especially on that 3x8 straight ruler. Great for extra grip. And like you said, if there's any neuropathy, arthritis, it's really nice. Or if, you one hand is out of commission momentarily, those little add handles are really nice, or even some of the bigger ones. It's just they add a little more stability in maneuvering. And then also the echo guides. We'll give away one of those. We'll be announcing the winners either later this week or early next week via email. So, and we'll send you your winnings. So we're going to give away a set of the add handles as well as a set of the ruler foot echo guides.
So notice that I was talking so much, she gave away 2 things at once because she had to catch us back up. I'm sorry, you guys.
We like
I was
content.
just so
It's okay.
interested in this cool design that, I just kind of gloss over it. So the add handles, let me pull that package out real quick. You're going to get a few different sizes. There are 6 pieces, I believe. Is that right, Sarah? 6 pieces. You're going
I
to get
think so. It's 2 per size.
2 big ones, 2 medium ones, and 2 little ones. And these, I haven't put these on, but I want to try these on my circle, on a big circle like that, putting them on 2 sides, kind of like that, so that I can kind of get a little extra grip on there. Because as we go around with a circle, we're sewing like this, right? So I think it'd be nice to have 2 small handles right across there like that. But I want to make sure that the foot is not going to bump that before I put those on. So that's what I'm going to use my 2 little ones for. And then I have one on my 12-inch arc can be either this size or the long one. And then certainly I showed you on my straight ruler, I've got the nice long one on there. So that's been really helpful having that on there. And then the echo rings are 3 different sizes, and we showed just 1 or 2 of those. And these are great. These fit perfectly on the Westalee foot. If you don't have the Westalee foot, you want to test and make sure that they fit securely and that they're not wiggling around on whatever ruler foot that you are using. Okay. I've tried it with the Bernina foot. It seems to work well. I was just using it with Janome foot. It seems to work well. So that's something you just want to check. But I know they fit perfectly on the Westalee foot. Okay. All right. So the next piece that I was going to share with you, we talked a little bit about the between the lines. This is retails for $50, and you get a lot of sizes, right? You get 5 actual templates in here, which I think I might have one missing. You get 5: 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch, 1 inch, 1.5, and 2 inch. All these lines that you see on here are really, really useful and valuable. What they allow is they make it really easy for you to put this maybe in a border like this, and then just use the lines right there and have this be centered. So then you don't have to mark. That's the whole function of this between the line, is I can actually use some channel and center this on it. Can I use a center line like I've designed right here? Of course, of course. This is a little bit wide right here to center that, but actually the edges right here of the templates pretty much fit right in this 4-inch space if I wanted to use that. So let's just go ahead, and I'm not worried about if these are aligned in the center of this length. I'm just going to put them in the center of this width. Okay. So whenever we use the between the lines circles, I do think these are very fast. They sew out pretty quickly, especially these small ones. The one thing that I want to tell you about that is sew a little bit faster, okay? When you're doing such a small circle like that, I think it's very, very difficult to move smoothly if you're sewing really, really slowly. Because what happens is the needle gets trapped, and the needle cannot move freely if you're sewing very slowly. So line up the front and the back. That's important, that you're going to align both sides, and give yourself a little bit of speed. And then I'll stop when my needle's right in the center line and just move down each time. If I make sure that as I pull this all the way forward, that the ruler is touching the back of the foot, I've got to pull it all the way forward. Then it will not overlap the circle before it. The only way that it will overlap is if we don't have it all the way connected to the foot, right? It's perfect circles in a tangent, right? They're just touching at one point, and they're not overlapping more than that each time. So these go really nice and quick, 1.5 times around, stopping on that center line, which is nice and easy visual. And we'll have this really cute layer of little 1-inch, 1/2-inch circles all the way down right in the middle. And this is how we're combining these elements to create a more visually appealing border. You know, by adding pieces, we're creating some visual interest. So it's not just that we say, okay, I just want one ruler. It's going to do all the borders for me. It's going to do everything. That gets kind of boring after a while. We want some interest. So by putting these together in combination, we can make a wider border and we can make something that still looks pretty fantastic. We're not just relying on a single template to finish out that look for us. Okay, I know that I just realized that I probably have a question. So could I figure 8 these so that I am doing my double stitching on opposite sides? Yes, I didn't think about it. I just was sewing on autopilot. So if that's something that's important to you, you can do one direction and one the other direction. And what that'll do is help to distribute that double stitching so that it alternates. And that is something that some people really want. They want that visual balance. So definitely you can do that or not. If you don't do it, nobody's going to say anything at all. They're just going to be like, oh, those are pretty circles. Good job. Okay, so we'll be right down to this last one. Make sure that you're lining up the back all the time as well. Don't just line up the front, okay? Because the back must also be aligned for the circle to be straight. So I'm not going to worry about if this is going any further because he would be inside the seam allowance at that point. All right. So what do you think? I don't want to do the other side. I think that you guys kind of got it, right? I think you could do the other side without me showing you. That center line that you've already marked is going to be the key to getting that aligned so that this design looks nice and symmetrical. You've already made that center marking, right? So if I just come on the other side and I align my clamshells and then I align the top, these are going to match up perfectly. And I'm going to have this beautiful symmetry right here with this little channel running right through the center. So it's going to look amazing. Any questions, Sarah, before we continue?
Let's see if there's anything fresh. I do want to talk about the echo guides really quick. I did put in a comment. Some folks were saying their echo guides were loose, especially on a non-Westalee branded ruler foot. One solution, and Kate, if you have others, let me know. Some folks will turn the ruler foot upside down because they are shaped in a certain to go on in one direction on the Westalee foot. But if you flip them upside down, sometimes they get a little bit more snug. The other solution was take a little bit of like clear Scotch tape and just lay that tape on the inner rim, and it will in essence narrow the diameter just fractionally enough to get it to fit on a non-Westalee foot.
Okay, I'm going to throw this one out there. I haven't done it because I don't need to. So I take no responsibility. You can try this or not. I want to let this be your own discretion. But somebody said they had put their nail polish, just put a little layer of nail polish in there, and that will narrow it out and tighten it up just a little bit. And because that is not so rigid, it is flexible a little bit, and you can put that on there. And then that way you can adjust that a little bit to get a little tighter foot. I haven't tried that, but I think it sounded like a very smart idea. I'd like to try it. So I haven't, but I might give it a try if I need to. So there's your 3 echo guides. You get 3 different sizes with that group. So we've done 3 of our different borders. Let's go ahead, and I just want to share a couple of them that are nice and cute. So I got a couple small ones. Where is my other one? That are actual border shapes and sizes. So these are not in the sampler set, but these are just really cute. And I wanted to just share these. So these are part of our border set. So obviously they kind of have more of that border look. They're designed to travel in a linear fashion. And I thought I would share both of these really quickly. And then we have one last one that uses that circles on quilts that I think looks really good. So we'll work on fitting all of those in. And then see what else we have time for. Okay, let's start with this one. Anytime that you purchase a rope template, the rope is going to have sizing information on it, like in the book when you buy it. Okay, so this is a I don't know, it's 1.5. I think there's something missing right there, but this is 1.5. What it's measuring is how tall that it's going to sew out. And then it will have this dimension right here that's showing you the full S right there of it is 4 inches like that. You could use that information. Mostly, I don't care how long it is. I care mostly how wide, how much the height is. So the space that we're doing this in, this is an end area right here. We'll just put it in this pink. And I can line this up basically with a line right up there to get it spaced. It's going to sew a 1/4 inch away. So let me show you real quick. Let's turn it this way. I've got these lines down here on the bottom. Right here, there's an actual physical line. Let's see if I can show you. I'm going to put my card under there. Okay, there's actually a line right there. Okay, and if I line it up on that line, notice that this is touching the top of the seam right there. It's touching this seam right there. So this can be an easy alignment visually here. And you've actually got a line right here that you can align on the bottom. What that's going to do is it's going to sew a 1/4 inch inside on either side, which is the 1/4 inch seam allowance right here. And this has no allowance here. It's going to just sew that 1/4 inch away. Or you can go ahead and align your space if you want to. If you want to have that center line, all of the ropes have a nice center line. So this particular piece, the cut for this was 2.5. And you can see right now, let's see, maybe I messed up. Oh yeah, no, that's 2.25 right there. It was 2.5. Okay, it's 2.25 right now. So that's the 1/4 inch seam allowance still in on this side. So that means that the center of this space is 1.25. So let's go ahead and we'll just mark that. Again, I think we'll use our air erase marker because that'll fit nicely. That makes sure that wherever we align, we are counting what the seam needs to have, right? That seam allowance. So the seam allowance on this side is already sewn in. So if I mark it from here, I'm just going to mark it at 1. Because that 1/4 inch has already been used up. Did you see I almost messed that up? Ha. I had to think on my feet there. Okay, so we'll just go ahead and we'll mark a little ways. We don't necessarily have to do all the way for you to get the idea. So we'll just kind of mark a good bit of it. I think there are letters on the rope. I'm just going to show you my own little method that I like to use. So there's the center line right there. If I line it up right on the center line, it's going to touch right there at the top, just like we said. So I'm going to go ahead and intentionally go off the edge and just sew off whatever happens at the other side, right? Here, I've got a little bit of extra room, so I'm just going to go ahead and use that as my start and just make sure that that goes underneath the foot. Okay. This is outside the boundary. It'll be in the seam allowance, so I'll just go ahead and I'll close that. And then I'm just going to sew down to the bottom. I'm always going to use this as the stopping point. That way I don't have to guess where I'm stopping. And I just push this forward so that this center line is on the middle line and this is touching. Right at the back, I'm going to align that as well. Okay. Here, we'll close the little rope and then go back down to the bottom. Okay, so in this area, this part is going to get double stitched every time. This kind of arc right here and the bottom won't. That is something for you to know. The way I'm doing it is simpler, but it's not going to give alternating double stitching. If you follow the ABs, you will get that. Okay, so now just line it up, push it down, line it up right on the center line. It's touching right here. And right on the back, I'm also aligned on the center line. And then touch and back down to the bottom. Okay, and then just scoot it forward. Check those 3 alignments each time, and then sew. One thing that I like about the rope is that it's very fast, it's very easy. It doesn't have a lot of complicated directions. You have a lot of great markings to keep it aligned, and it lets you sew pretty quickly. If you just want to knock out that border and get it done, this is a great way to do it. We have so many different sizes of ropes. This one is for a pretty skinny, cute little border. This is the 1.5. And we have other 1.5s. So I just want to comment on that as well. Some of the ropes that we have, some of them have the rope more like a soldier at attention, where the rope is standing a little bit more upright. And some of them have the rope where he's laying over a little bit more. He's kind of relaxed. That's just a difference in look a little bit. That'll be something for you to choose. Let me show you one more alignment real quick as we've got this set up. I'm just going to slip my card underneath there. Notice that there is a rope alignment. Let's see if we can get you in a little closer so you could see that better. Can you guys see that? The little white lines for the rope. There's actually a little alignment right here, a cutout, where the rope is got a silhouette. As I am moving the template forward, I can align that right on that existing rope, and that's going to help get me aligned so that I'm correctly positioned for the next one. Now, we haven't needed that yet, so if you don't need that, that's okay. But it's the reasoning that there's several different ways to align this and position it, and you should just use whatever is best for you, what is most easy for you to follow, and what will help you be accurate and get this done quickly. Okay. So what do you think? Do you like the rope? I actually think her rope is really, really beautiful. Look at how gorgeous it is. Here, we'll scoot it out a little bit. I want you to be able to see a little bit more of it. Can you see it? Maybe we'll take it out. Let's just tack a little bit right here. I'm going to tack right in the existing stitch line. You can actually even use the ruler to tack if you wanted to.
And Kate, that was from the border sampler set, that particular one, right?
Say it again, Sarah.
That particular rope is part of our border sampler set. Is that correct?
I think that this one is not. That one is much larger. This one came as an added ruler in the Circles on Quilts wreath set, which I don't think we sell it that way anymore.
Right. I know. I was just looking for it. I'll just
this
add
is
the ropes.
1.5B, letter B.
Thank you.
So this one's a little bit smaller. The one that's in the border sampler set is quite a bit taller. Let me just grab that so we can compare real fast. That's the one thing about being at home is we have the ability to show you a lot of different things because we have them with us. This is the one from the wreath set, right? And this is the one that I just used. And this one would be one you just basically buy on its own. It's much smaller than this, quite a bit so. I'll just flip them so they go the same direction. And these basically have the same sort of orientation, that the rope is almost at a 45-degree angle, not quite so upright, but we have ones that are more upright. You'll be able to look in the catalog and see the different pictures, but that's what you're looking for. Do you want the rope to be kind of more aligned top to bottom, or is it okay if it stretches out? So this one is the 2.5 inch. So this is going to fit really well in maybe like a 3-inch border. You can fit it in a 2.5, but the reason I don't always want it that tight is if your seam allowance is a little narrowed or a little wide, this may end up sewing into that seam allowance. So I always want to create a little bit of breathing room whenever I'm using a border template that's a specific size. I want it to fit inside the border. Excuse me. So I wouldn't want to do this right in a 2.5 inch space because the chances are that if I did that, it might sew outside that boundary, you know, like right here, that's a pretty tight fit right there to make sure that that wouldn't sew out. This is supposedly 2.5. And I think that this right there is bigger than that right there. So this would definitely sew into this pink. And I don't want that. I want a bigger space so that I know it will fit in there just fine. More like this as a fit. So this one is the 2.5. This is from the Border Sampler Set. And then the one that we did today is the 1.5B. And the reason I have these grips on both sides is you can make your rope go different directions. Like if I want it to scoot that way, or if I want it to look like it's going that way, you can adjust that by just flipping it over. You'd still use the same method to sew it. Okay.
Nice. And
yeah,
I did have
I'm going to
some.
answer Di's question really quickly. She
Yeah.
commented that if your border was wide, so like if this was wider and there was a gap, that's what these beautiful little arches are right here. Once I've sewn the rope, I can actually lay this right on the existing stitch line. So it's actually touching the line. And this is going to give you a perfect 1/4 inch echo. And as the foot were to come in, it's going to have a natural bump stop right there, which will perfectly give you that 1/4 inch echo, right? And then once you stop there, you could just scoot this down, get it lined up on the existing, and then you can just keep sewing down. And you can do this more than once, but it's really set up for a 1/4 inch echo. So it doesn't really have like an echo reference line on this one. So that's how much different in size that these are, right? Big difference in size. So you have lots of options as far as those rope templates go. Okay, let's go ahead and pull out that other little curly one. So we can do that one. And now I have so many templates here that I need to get organized. So you guys, if you have not seen our awesome ruler rack, I'm just going to put it up here because it's fantastic. So many times I have so many tools and I cannot get organized and I can't find what I need. And I usually put them on the rack so that I don't have them underneath something that they shouldn't be. And then I kind of organize them based on what's the most important. So 12-inch arc in the front, straight ruler, and then whatever the project requires. So I kind of put them in order of priority. And this has been very, very helpful for me to stay organized because I am a messy sewer. I admit it. I like to be organized more, but it's very hard for me. The next one we're going to do is called the Continuous Border Loop. And this one was part of the Meadow Dance Border Set. Sarah, do you know, are we still carrying that as a grouping?
Yeah, we definitely have it.
Yeah, so that one has a great collection of different ones. It has the 16-inch feathered wreath. It has a lot of different unique pieces. Let me see if I can pull that out real quick. Oh, I think I just grabbed it out of there. I don't have the whole grouping. Sarah, if you would put the link for that so people can check it out, because it has some fun options in terms of a diversity of selection. You know, sometimes we are showing a lot of the same items, and this one comes in a group that is very fun and unusual and has some good big pieces and small pieces. This is designed to sew 1 inch this way, and it's 2 inches this way. And because it's a loop to loop, the loops are working basically kissing each other. So you can see right there, this is 1 loop. So even though this is 2, the way it sews, you're going to sew around and then you're going to hop over, and this will fill in the gap right there. So there's a center line right there, but the height is that 1 inch size. So let's go ahead and mark this one on this end. These are both kind of on the ends with these little bit of shorter spaces. So both of these were cut and they will end up being 2 inches wide. Okay, so this one is going to be a little bit narrow. When we mark for this one, he's not going to fill up that space so much. It's going to be a little bit of room on either side. So we'll just mark that at 1. And again, I'm going to use that air erase. Okay, so the total space on this is the 2.5 inch cut. And when it is sewn in, it will end up being a 2-inch wide opening for this space. Okay. And again, if I wanted to ensure that I had the perfect amount right here down on the bottom and the same on the other one, then I would start in the middle. So I'm not going to do that at this point. I'm just going to kind of start here on the end, and we'll just work down, and whatever we get, we get. Let's see, maybe we'll just make it a little bit longer. I think we have a center line that we could use because we have the same center line here. I think if we extend it, we might be good. That would be convenient, right? Let's see. Right there. I think we can do it. So we'll try to square it up. Right there. So we'll work from the middle out to one corner. That'll kind of demonstrate that aspect of working from the center, making sure that you've got it aligned. Now, this does not look the same both directions, right? It's going to have this little cross on the bottom, and it's going to have this loop on the top. So that depends on which direction you want it to go. So you need to make a decision. This is where you could use those stitching line discs, I think, and get those lined up pretty easily. Let's extend that center line. I think that's important for you to know that they're not going to look the same unless you make that choice. They're not going to be the same top and bottom. They're going to be a little bit different each direction. Make sure we get to the middle, right? Okay, there's our center. So we're going to ignore this part because, I don't know, he's got a mind of his own. All right, so we'll lay it right on the center. Notice for the space that we're using, this is half right here. So if we line this up, this will be right in the middle. That'll get us the perfect spacing. So it's this top line right here that we're going to be using. And that is putting the center of this right in that center position. This is going to sew out right at that 1-inch space. Okay. So we'll kind of start right here in the middle, and we'll use that as our alignment. I can also shift it over and I can line up the hook. Those are just different choices that you're making about how you want to line up the center. But I'll just line it up right here at the bottom because that's pretty convenient. And then when I come back, I can go ahead and I can put that foot right in that same position. That'll make it really easy to get us lined up to go back the other way. Okay. So right there into the hook. Once you're in the hook, you're just going to scoot over. Let's get these threads out of there. We don't want them following us. And then you're just hopping over, right? So we were the foot right here, and now we just hopped over. When we line it up, let me show you a couple things to look for. Okay. We don't yet have one full loop yet, but there is a little bit of the loop reference that comes right down right at the bottom. This little anchor right here is right on that line. And that's telling us that we will hit right in the middle of the quarter. So let me show you. Right there is exactly a 1/4 inch. And I can see that because this cross mark aligns right on that space. So we'll sew this whole side. And then here, push through that little center and come right up to the top. And then you're just going to hop it over. Now we have the visual markings. We have the center line, and we have this alignment right here where we can get it right on the existing line. And what that does for us is that gives us the 1/4 inch right there. So it's very important that we use the reference markings on there. Otherwise, we're going to end up crossing over those circles. If we line right on the reference lines each time and you trust them, you should be able to have that perfect 1/4 inch and not have your design have a gap or crossover in any kind of weird way. Okay, so each time stop in the hook, take a minute, get this all lined up so that you're right on the existing reference lines. Make sure everybody's where they need to be. And that's how you're going to get that really pretty connection right there. Okay, so we'll just keep going. I do sometimes check, like if for some reason things just don't look like they're fitting, just kind of stick that on there. Maybe you need just a little smush. to get a little bit tighter. And that's because fabric does shift around, right? We know that. It's drawing up and it's going to create a little bit of push and pull. So we can make those adjustments because we're not robots. We know that we want it to fit and we can make it fit. Okay, so each time, and it's lining up pretty nicely. That's one of the things I do like about this. Oh, lead foot, sorry. Nice and easy. And we'll just keep on going each time. Just get those nice and aligned. And that keeps our design right in the center and does really help it have that nice, pretty kiss between those little loops right there. So let's see, I'm going to give it a little smush. Right on the bottom, there's a slight V, right? It comes down to a little bit of a point. It's important as you go that you change your direction just a little bit as you go. We want to make sure that we're actually following that V instead of kind of cutting it off. So right here, actually go in and come out of the V. You want to think of that as a very active sewing activity that you're doing to make sure that you're actually getting that nice shape there on the bottom. I think it's almost rounded. So what can happen is you sort of get sewing fast and you kind of just gloss right over it, but actually go into the dip and come out. And that's going to give you that really unique shape that this has. So we're almost down to the bottom. So just like we talked about before with the rope, this continuous border loops come in many different sizes. And we actually do have some content on them. They have some that are very, very tall, some that are very skinny. You know, you get to choose. Right here at this last one, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to sew it all the way. And I want to make sure I get my fabric under the foot there. This would leave a gap right there if we didn't continue sewing. So let's see if we can get you in just a little bit tighter so you can see what I mean. If I just stopped right there, then the design isn't finished and the loop would be inside of the binding. So you would definitely see it. So go ahead and do this last one so you can get the last loop connector right in there. So that'll be something just to think about, not to forget that you want to just adjust for that very last one. Make sure that you can get that last little piece in there. Okay. All right. So Sarah, did you want to put a link to the CBLs so they can see that? Because it's such a cute border. But again, right here, it's got some extra space because this is only 1 inch in a 2-inch border. So what I did with this one is I went ahead and I sewed a 1/4 inch inside this seam allowance. And the thing to think about is I can sew that right now just by putting my straight ruler on here, and I can fill in just like that. I can actually have it aligned right on the seam, and the foot is going to sew a 1/4 inch away. It'll fill up this space perfectly. Right there is about a 1/2 inch. But on this side, I would want to do your binding first, put your binding on, and then you can sew that line inside, because what you don't want is you don't have a really good sense of where the binding will actually be until it's on. So you could actually put the binding on and then just sew from edge to edge right there. That's just something to consider, or you might be able to come along on this side and do it this way and use the edge of this design as the guide. So you know that this is a 1/2 inch, we're sewing in the middle. So by the same token, if I aligned that right there, I should get that same relationship on that side. So those are a couple different ways that you can work on that. All right, so let's get organized for our next one. So we've shown you those 2 cute borders, and we have those available in a grouping and not in a grouping. So those are just some different choices that you have. And then let's see, the next one we want to do is that Circles on Quilts one, which I think is really, really pretty. All right, so it's kind of busy. I did want to put some pretty fun colors in here. So let me show you what it looks like. It's a little bit tricky because the arcs that go on the outside, those are a little bit to play with. And you can see that it's not 100% perfectly smooth, right? So we have a line that is centered and we have a center line. And as this is coming down, you know, this needs to be a 1/4 inch above, this needs to be a 1/4 inch below the center line. So let's start working with these first. We first need to figure out what spacing do we want to have? And this can be changeable. This space right here is a 3.5 inch opening. So let me just show you real quick. Right? So when it's sewn, it's right at about 3 inches. So you're cutting this at 3.5, and it's going to sew out at about 3 inches when we're making this part of the design. This design right here sews out at 5.5, but we're only doing half of it. So it's going to sew out at 2 3/4 in terms of this height right there. And that's what's leaving this little gap right there. You're going to get just a small space on top of that to play with. Let's go ahead and get that set up. And the spacing between these, let's see, from center to center. I'm just going to try to measure here real quick from the center. Yeah, it's right at 5 inches. So when we're marking that, we're going to start in the center. We'll put the first one in the center. Here you go. It's a 5 inches on center, right? And here's the other measure right there. So that's straight down the center line. So that's the measurements that we're going to use. Could we make those wider? Yes, absolutely. We could make them wider. You could make them whatever you feel is best. And then you can fill in around them just like we're going to. So let's go ahead and cut some of these threads and we'll go ahead and start measuring for those. We'll use that same center mark that we used on the other one and we'll just extend it down so we can find the center. Okay, it's the same thing that we did before. We'll just mark that. And then what I did when I did this is I think it's useful to do all of your circles on quilts first. Okay, so we'll just mark that first. And then I'm going to put my crosshair square on there. Normally I would use my smaller one, but I honestly don't know what I did with it. So I'm using my big one today. But the big one is the one that I usually have at home. So it's most convenient for me. So we need all of these lines to line up for our design. And I'm going to get my chopper liner out. It fits perfectly in my crosshair square. So we'll just make these marks. And then this part down here is the line. We'll use this part as the bottom boundary right there. So this has got a couple of marks on it. And then we want to mark it 5 inches away. And we're going to alternate. If this one is going this way, then the other ones have to be marked on the opposite side. Okay. All right. So we'll use Donnell's awesome centering ruler. And then we'll just mark it at 5. I guess we'll use that right there. We have to put it up on this side. So right there will be the center for that one. And this will be the center for this one. Okay, and then 10 inches on this side. And the same on this side. So I would go ahead and just mark all those crosshair squares. There's not a ton of lines because we are only doing a few. But use that center point as your point of alignment. And then mark the rest of those lines.
Hey, Kate.
Yeah.
Should we do our last giveaway?
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Okay, so our last giveaway is going to be our spacing gauge, which you've seen Kate use on and off throughout the whole broadcast, a very useful tool, as well as we'll include the Crafter's Notion necklace. And that's great to not lose your spacing gauge because they are small and easy to misplace, or a pet can grab them. So having them attached to the Crafter's Notion necklace helps them not get lost or go into the vacuum cleaner. And we'll announce a winner later this week or early next week via email.
Okay, thank you so much, Sarah. I do love my Notions necklace and my spacing gauge. I mean, you can see that we use it a lot for so many different things. And I absolutely love having that Notions necklace because mine used to always get lost, and not anymore. Now I can find it. Okay, so we've done those markings. So the way that we're going to sew this is a little bit different than we normally sew the circles on quilts. And I still am going to use the pin. Okay. Typically, we don't sew in this area right here from A to B. We're going to actually cross over that this time and just make a little different look. So let me get my pin. And right there at that point, that's where we want it to go. It's going to orient this way. Because this is on the two different sides, I really like that because it prevents somebody from looking at it as just a one-way thing. It makes it seem like the border has fluff on both sides. Okay, so we'll put this on. We're right on that pin. We've got these easy reference lines. Where are we going to start? At the beginning, we'll start at the top. So maybe I'll sew this way because we want to end up going that way. So I'll align on this side. That way we'll be going in a natural progression. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to get my needle seated right in the seam allowance, just like we said before. And I will also tack that a little bit in the seam allowance. I'll stitch a little bit right in the ditch there just to make sure that this is properly anchored because we aren't coming back to this area, right? So just go ahead and lock that in and a little bit of stitching right there. Okay. And then I'll just pull these threads out of the way. I'm aligned right at the center. So just like we talked about before, you know, you're sewing from A to B, right? So this would be the stop position right there for B. But I'm actually going to sew all the way down to the border. And then I'm going to come back to B. I need to be at B or I cannot rotate smoothly. Anything with this template, if you're not at the B position, you're not going to have a nice ability to rotate as you go around. That's the place where the foot is designed to cross over. So now we'll align it right there. Let's get these little threads out of our way. We're right on this reference line and we're now at A because we rotated. Okay, so we'll just sew all the way around. We're going from A to B, but just like we did before, we're going to sew from A to B all the way. Close that and back to B. And then rotate again, and we're going to sew from A to B and all the way around. Once we're at B, we'll go and we'll close the design and back to B. Okay, and then we'll just keep rotating each time. All the way around, close it and back to B. Once we're at B, we're on the last one and we'll close it first. So we're at A, we want to come in this way first and close that to the boundary and then go all the way out. Okay. And then right there, we'll just go ahead and get into that stitch in the ditch allowance right there, and we'll put a few tacking stitches right in the ditch right there. Okay. Now we have to continue moving this to the other side, so I'll just pull him out and get him aligned on this other side. And if you need this off, just it allows you more freedom of movement. If you take the template off, you can just use the key. We don't necessarily know exactly what we need right here yet, so I'm just going to set this aside and get the pin seated first. And then we'll figure out where we need to be. I just don't want to pull a lot of thread out until I know what I need. So I'm just going to scoot that up, try to get where I can see the pin, and I'll put it right in that hole. Ooh, I need a little bit of light right there. Okay, so it's right in that center position. Oh, not very good. It's a little bit offset. Let's see if we can get it right in there. We want to be right in that seam allowance right there as best we can. So now I can see what I need. I can actually just put that right on there. We're going to be all the way over to this side, and we've already tied this off. So let's just pick it up. We'll get this aligned where we want to be, and we'll jump over like that. Okay, then get your needle centered right in your ditch right there. And again, we'll tack that in. A few tacking stitches right there, definitely moving. Once that's tacked, I can just cut this thread over here. Otherwise, he's going to trap my movement. So I'll just hold him in place, get him out of the way. I'm sewing all the way to the boundary and back to A. We're going the opposite direction this time, so our letters are going to be reversed. Okay. So go all the way across, close the design, and then back to A, and then rotate. All the way to your start point and back, and then rotate again. Back to A, and we'll do the last one aligned right on that center. On the last one, come forward first. That's just so much easier than trying to have to come back and close that later. So make sure you don't forget that part. And right here, we'll just do a little tacking right there. And again, now we can just take this off. That just helps us kind of get this out of the way so we can manipulate and get our pin where it needs to be. And I would just keep progressing along the design that way so that I can keep the design going. So this is what we're getting so far. You know, it's got the chalk, but you've got this side, and then on the next one, we're going to go down to the center. And we'll put that pin right in there. And that's just kind of creating a little fun movement. Ooh, my fingers don't want to work. Right there. Keep your fingers out of the way so that you don't put your finger right on the pin. Yes, I just did that. Okay. And then go ahead and align that. So this is helping us to get the template into position before we need to disengage this. And that just means that we're not having to mess around with it. This is holding everything, but it's not in our way. So we've already tacked it off. We'll come right over to here and get it right into the ditch right there. We can even do a little manipulation, make sure he's not too far down wherever we have it aligned. So put a little tacking right there. And here we go. All the way in to touch and back to B. Okay, and then before we can rotate it, we've got to cut this thread. So keep that in your mind. We don't want to be trapped by that. Next one, A to B and all the way back. Oh, that little thread is going to get sucked right in there if I don't move him out of the way. I just cut him. I can't get him to come out, but there we go. He is not attached to anything important, so he can just move. Okay. All the way back to your A position and back to B. There's a natural spot right there where the foot just sinks right into that. That makes it really easy for you to line that up so you can stop. All the way across till you touch and back to B. And then same thing each time. It's just a little different way of using this template. Creates a little different visual impact. You because it's also closed there on the bottom, this is a good opportunity for template as well because we are closing the bottom. So there's different areas then that can be cut out very conveniently this way. So close the bottom first and then do this part. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to close my design and I'm going to do the tacking stitches. So you've already seen some of the process of how we did several of them. Okay. So now we want to go ahead and maybe put those little echoes in there so you can see how those work. We'll take this off. Always put your tape back on. Put your pin in a safe place. Okay. The trickiest part about this is that that arc has to be able to kind of come over the top. I don't have very much room. I think we'll only be able to do one arc. So maybe that was 3 1/4 because it looks like it was bigger before. But let's kind of split this in the middle because that's really where the curve has to change. That's the thing that we have to be aware of. If we have one arc on one side, he's got to stop somewhere right in here and transition to this other direction. So we kind of need the center mark a little bit in here in order to do that. So let's go ahead and just show you what I mean. So we said that this space, it's a 3-inch space. So we're going to mark right at 1 1/2. And I'll kind of do it from this side as well because we need at least a couple of these. All right, and we'll go all the way down. I think it's easier to sew when you don't have unnecessary markings, you know, on your space. So that's why I'm not putting all these kinds of alignments on here before class. If I have all these lines on here, it gets a little confusing, I think. So right now, we're not using these crosshair marks anymore. We can actually take just a little scrap of fabric and we can take off some of the lines that we don't need. Like if this starts getting a little bit too busy for you, we can take off some of the lines that are no longer of any value. So this one goes to that other side over there. So we still need that. So now I can just kind of eliminate some of these confusing lines. I think for some people visually, we can't have a million lines all over the place because it's just frustrating for their brain. So if you're that person, just take a little piece of fabric. This is a broadcloth. It's a little bit coarser than some of our quilting fabrics. And I'm just going to use that and just take some of those lines off so that I can see better what I need to do. Okay, and then I'll just keep that 1 1/2 inch line, make it go all the way down. And then we'll just have that as our center mark right there. Okay, so obviously right here, I would probably want a partial. I think that this could definitely be another piece of the design that we would want to add in. So let's take some different arcs and we'll see what can we get with different sizes. One of the ways to manipulate this and make it fit is to go from here to the top and down to the center and to the top. Like if I can't make the arc fit perfectly, I can only do a little piece of the arc and then that way I can manipulate it. And the challenge for it then is it may not be perfectly smooth, but at least it is going to have a very routine and regular look for itself. Is that batting? Oh, that is batting. I was like, there's a white thing on there, but it belongs there. It's attached. Okay, so let me just show you. I've got 2 different options for you, a couple different sizes. This one is a little taller around the top and a little narrower. This one is the 6-inch inside-outside curve, and you can kind of put it on there. And we want it to touch the top right there. We can even use that center line to line it up. And we want to kind of get to that center position. That way, when I go the other way, I can put this one like that, and I can try to hit them right in the middle. So what we're looking for is to kind of manipulate this space. So if that's 2 inches, we want to sort of just mark that right in the middle. So let's see if we can do that. Yeah, it's about 1 inch. So we'll just put the mark right in the center so that you can see it. This one's maybe slightly bigger. So maybe right there. Okay. All right. So since that one's going to connect down there and I don't know where it connects, let's use this one as the start. And then I can come back to this one later. I'll leave these tails because I'll want to come and tie them off later. I don't want to put a bulky stitch right in the center there. So this one would fit like this. We want to line it up right on the center. He's going to touch right there, but he's a little bit short of our center position. Whereas this one, let's see what we can make him do. So if you can't make it fit, this is what I mean. You're going to manipulate to get to the top and then manipulate to get to the bottom. So let's use that 6-inch. I think that's a good size. So right there, he's going to come up all the way to the top right there. And I think he'll actually fit right to the middle. So right to the center. And then this one's got to go the opposite way, right to the center position. Okay, and I'm just going to adjust my hand. Okay. And then this would be the same thing. And I would line this up on the center of the design, and it's about a 1/4 of an inch away. It's touching at the top. So just making sure that that would be straight. And then this would fill out that other part of the design right there. Now, on the sample, I had 2 of those lines. So that is even a little bit more tricky. You're going to have a line a 1/4 inch above and a 1/4 inch below the center, because if you're putting another echo in, you're going to have this line be on this side, and then the underside have a line there that will connect. So the way that we did it, we just split it in the middle. But if you were doing it with 2 lines, you would use the center, and then you would have this inner one connect here. And then when this one came down, it would connect here. And then you would have a line above and a line below. And an example of what would make those lines and make them fit nicely would be using different arcs that are appropriately sized, or different circles that are appropriately sized, because it's only about a 1/2 of an inch in between. So the 7-inch on the circles on quilts could be that other arc that you could use that would fit in there. So I manipulated these. It's not that they fit perfectly. So if you use your center position and you echo out to whatever your dot is, that's how I made those lines fit in there and give me that nice, pretty curvature. So you're going from the center position to whatever your mid position is, to your center position, to your mid. And this becomes the transition for the curve, that center position. So let's see, I think we have, that's pretty much it. The other one is kind of encompassed in the other design. I'll show it to you real quick. We had one more on here that would be in sort of the space where all the different colors are, like this, where the fabric is. And all this is this is my 12-inch arc, and I just made it go all the way along, and I centered the circles on it, and they didn't fill the space. And then I just used the little clamshell to fill that in. And that's why you get this cute little scallop right up here. Okay, so we are real close to the end of our time. So let's see, what other questions did I not see? Carol, yes, this is a program where you're going to have 4 weeks to watch that. And I'm just going to look at my comments really quick too, see if there's anything that we can find useful.
And Kate, just based on some of the questions, and I know I see Nana just put this in, are these rulers a 1/4 inch thick? Could you briefly review the different thicknesses of templates and why that's important?
You bet, you bet. Actually, I've got most of those right here. So whenever we're talking about thickness of templates, you always have to be reminded that it's based on what your machine can accommodate. My machine, this particular one, not all of this brand, but this particular machine, if I were to use a long arm ruler at the back of it, I can. Okay, this is the long arm thick right here, this arc, and there is no obstruction on the back of this foot if I use a fat ruler. So I can use this on my long arm and I can use it on my domestic machine. If I have a low shank foot, that is not possible. Okay, the low shank foot, it looks like this. Okay, it's very, very skinny. And that is because the metal bar that this attaches to is coming down very, very far. If I were to use this fat ruler with this low shank foot, let me show you what's going to happen. Notice how the foot is above the edge of the ruler, the lip of the ruler right there. It actually, the ruler is lower, right? Can you see that? The foot is up high. So number one, the foot isn't going to be able to descend all the way down if I'm using a thick ruler on a low shank foot. And the stitch cycle becomes impeded. It can't stitch well. More than that, if it's already touching the ruler like that, like really tight like that, then I can't move the ruler because it's stuck to it. So that is how come you want to use the skinny ruler. So let me see, this is my low shank ruler, right? Notice here, if this is on the fabric, resting on the fabric, and the foot is too, notice that there's room right there for that to move freely. It's not pushed all the way up and has nowhere to go, because you would have this basically like that, where the foot and the ruler would be touching at the same level, and then this could easily manipulate on the back side of the foot. There's never a problem using any of our templates on the front or on the side, fat, skinny, whatever. What is always the issue is whether you have enough clearance at the back of the foot. If you're using high shank, the high shank ruler could use the low shank, right? There's no clearance issue back there. He can move just fine, but we do recommend those high shank rulers with that because that's a perfect fit. If you have two machines, including a low shank and a high shank, it is mostly 100%, not mostly, it's not 100%, it's mostly possible that you will be able to use a low shank ruler on your high shank and your low shank. You would need different feet because the feet have to match the machine, but you would probably be able to use those skinnier rulers on both machines. So you can just buy one set of rulers. If I have a low shank machine and a long arm machine, I cannot share rulers between those two. That is unsafe. The rulers for the long arm have to be thick because the ruler foot on the long arm machine is actually elevating and coming back down. That is not happening on your domestic machine. This foot is staying at the same level. So even if I used a fatter ruler, it's not like it's going to go under, right? There's no way any of these rulers are going to go underneath my foot if the foot is properly positioned. It's more likely that as a user, I might put the ruler over the foot on accident, and then the needle will hit it and maybe break. So was that too complicated of an explanation? So bottom line is, if you are on a low shank machine only, you need low shank rulers. If you have a high and a low shank machine, we encourage you to check in with us, but in most cases, you'll be able to use a low shank ruler for both of those, or to potentially have two different sets. You would want to have a foot for each machine that matches the machine style. If you have a long arm, you need long arm rulers only on your long arm. And if you have certain machines, they may be able to use a long arm ruler. For example, high-end Janome machines like the 9450 and the M7 have a large amount of clearance at the back of the foot. And in the manual from the manufacturer, it states that you can use long arm thickness rulers. If you have a Bernina 72 foot, there is a lot of clearance at the back of that ruler foot, and you can use long arm rulers with that foot without any problem. There may be others, but those are the ones that I'm aware of. So you can always ask us. We are testing that stuff all the time. We're trying to find the answers and making sure that we're giving you good information. Okay, so hopefully that answered that question. Anything else, Sarah?
I think that's pretty good. And I'll just say in general, if anyone has any questions about compatibility with their particular machine, just give us at So Steady a call, or you can reach out to Mike at So for Less, and we can work you through, especially if you have more than one machine. We can kind of break it down and you can kind of see the pros and cons of which way you want to go.
That is great. There's a lot of educators out there that will help you. Also, Westalee by me, we're there to try to answer those type of questions. And there's bound to be somebody out there who has your machine that can help add some input in there. Make sure you get it from a reputable source because there is some misinformation out there.
Right. When in doubt, you can always, give us a call at So Steady and we can say, yes, this reseller is, one of our legitimate resellers. We have lots of them to choose from. So don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions on that. But otherwise, I think we're good. And then Kate, you check the chat section of these usually for about a couple weeks after the broadcast, right? In case there's a few
Yes, I
remaining
definitely
questions.
go through. And so one thing to be aware of is if you put a question in the chat, when I respond, I cannot respond as a live chat because the live portion is over. So if I respond, I have to respond in the public comments at the bottom of the video. So if you have a comment that wasn't answered, but you need that information, please check the public chat section at the bottom of the video. If there's still no answer, I'm readily available through Messenger on Facebook, or through So Steady. There's a lot of places I can still answer those questions, but make sure you're looking in the correct place because the answer will not be in the live chat or the top chat.
Nice. And well, thanks everyone. Don't forget to use your coupon code in the next couple weeks. All purchases made on our So Steady website help support Mike over at So For Less, which we're so grateful to have so many of our participating retailers getting the word out, helping you as the student and quilter get inspired and get new tools so you can keep fresh and keep learning more. And Kate, thank you. We can't do it without you. You are the star.
Oh yeah, no, I'm so glad. I did want to. I'm going to second your comment. I think I hear some people saying, well, I have to. I want to guard my checkbook while I watch these videos, and we understand that we're all real people. We work, we pay bills. We're not, we're just like you. We're regular people. Everybody that works at our shop is regular people. All of our educators are regular people. But without a shop to sponsor this, Mike has really created a window of access that is really unique and has been consistent. So he's created a really great way for people to access this content. And we encourage you to support him because otherwise we can't provide these great programs that he is doing. So it is just something to think about, when you're making your choices where you want to put your money, know that he's out there really trying to make sure that you have the resources and the information that you need on a continuous basis. So I just want to say thank you to him for doing that. It's been really fun and great. And I've got to see a lot of other inspiring educators as well. So I hope you enjoy it. Happy New Year. Have a terrific year and look for our new content. We've got lots of fun things coming up. It's going to be a great year. I'm looking forward to it.
Thanks, everyone. We'll see you on the other side next year for more quilting.
Amen. Bye-bye.